And in the morning, I remember getting a call from this value add service company. What have you done? And I was like, what do you mean? I said, this is one of the longest calls we've got, and it did 16,000 calls last night.
Whoa. That's amazing.
And I was like, you what?
So over the past month and a half on the YouTube channel, we've spoken to some really, really cool people. We've spoken to guys that are great surfers. We've spoken to photographers. We've spoken to, practically everyone from every walk of life, professional athletes. And today I have an absolute privilege and pleasure to chat to a gentleman that I got to know in the nightclub scene, but not playing music, but laughing my ass off and hanging out with what was then known as Michael Naicker, a character I was introduced to, like most of us in South Africa, were at a braai with someone on with a voice file on their phone going, geez, did you hear this? And to my surprise, I found out that Michael Naicker was, in fact, not Indian, but a rather pale-looking white guy by the name of Kevin Perkins, and that's who joins me on the show. Hello, Kev.
Hey, Gordy, how you doing, buddy?
It's so good to catch up with you. Firstly, and I think most importantly, we need to just tell everyone that you've since abandoned South Africa and become one of those complaining expats in the UK. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Yes, indeed. I have been... listen, all those years growing up in Durban, I was always told, listen, when you're going back to England...
and then you did.
Why you talk so funny? When you're going back to England, check out your white skin, you're going back to England. So look who's laughing now.
Yeah, exactly. We have load shedding in 40 minutes, so I got to hurry. No, I'm kidding. You don't have load shedding yet.
Oh, wow.
Wait, it's coming. It is coming. Kev, so great to catch up with you. We'll get into the comedy side, which is what most people know you for here in South Africa and how you ended up in the UK. But I think a good place to start is let's do a little introduction. Who is Kev Perkins? You say you grew up in Durbs. Where did you go to school? Were you a naughty bugger at school? And how did that all go down?
Well, I wasn't initially. I think I was quite a good kid. I mean, I was born in St. Augustine's Hospital.
Hey, very cool.
Yeah, and I lived most of my life in New Germany, which is just outside of Pinetown.
Right.
And my family was just always we had a very loving sort of family, very sort of we used to love to come to our house, and we were always having braais and things. And my parents were very good joke tellers and doing accents and things, so of course it rubbed off on me. And I went to school at my primary school was Lindbergh Primary. Hey, here's the thing. I was actually head boy of my primary school.
Wow.
That's what a good boy I was.
Do they admit it that you were head boy of the primary school, or do they just say it was someone else?
I don't think so. Not anymore.
They
probably rubbed that bit off because they probably rubbed that bit off,
Yeah.
On the board in the foyer. They probably rubbed, yeah. But and then I went to Pinetown Boys High.
Yes.
Which was kind of where all of us got drafted to, as like Kersney College, all the fancy schools up on the hill, the Botha's Hill, Botha's Hill, sorry, you're supposed to say
Botha's, yeah.
They used to call us factory workers.
Oh wow.
And it used to piss me off until I realized I was a factory worker. So yeah, it's all that sort of middle class kind of shebang, but it was like over 1,000 boys.
Wow.
In Pinetown Boys High. So it was a big school. We had 10 open rugby teams. And but my sports were mainly swimming, and I did hockey.
Okay.
I played rugby in standard 6 and 7, but I was shit.
You're a young, strong guy. I can't imagine why you would say that about yourself.
Well, you know what? If I got the ball, I was lucky. Then it was, because I always played second center or wing. And so I had a bit of speed and I was able to get through. But as soon as I was a late developer. So also there was a problem, where I would go onto the field. I mean, I didn't even have pubes, and these other oaks were like growing beards. And you know, when you get the hospital pass and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll
So
see you next
I
Wednesday.
got smashed.
Yeah.
I thought, no, this is not going to end well for me. So I switched across to hockey, which was fine because in my family, hockey was like a second religion for the men.
Yes.
It was big. Oh, the Perkins clan was big on their hockey, and they were quite well known in the old days around Durban because they were also thugs. But
Love
they
it.
used to do like street boxing and hockey and
Yeah.
cricket. They were
Yeah.
big. So you know, kind of a weird sort of environment. You know, they I think because my grandfather was a heavyweight boxing champion, and he used to set up a ring, and all the neighborhood kids would come around and do that. So the Perkins brothers were known as being sort of quite capable chaps, and my dad was a big bloke, but gentle chap. I mean, my dad would never he never hurt anybody, but people were scared of him, which was great. But yeah, so played hockey, and I did okay at school. Didn't do too badly.
Yeah.
And I went to university. I was going to study engineering.
Yes.
And oh God, I won't go into all the details, but long story short, I came out with mechanical engineering and not really wanting to do it.
Wow. Which I think happens
So,
to a lot of people that, you know, they go and study something because, I mean, let's face it, you don't really know what you want from life when you're, you know, when you're 17, 18 years old.
no.
You go and study something because you have to. And then years later, you're kind of like, well, why did I waste the time?
Yeah. Well, listen, the good thing that came out of it was, you know, when you've done your studies, you have to go and do pracs. You have to go and do practicals.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing my practicals for a weapons and armaments manufacturer based, believe it or not, in New Germany.
Wow.
And nobody even knew they were there. We all had to sign secrecy documents and whatnot, but they were the only guys taking on, at the time, there was a shortage of companies taking on guys for their pracs.
Wow.
And so I managed to get in there, but they didn't really do proper pracs with us. They just put us in production.
Wow.
Because they do, like, a student hungover on his worst day still produce more than the average act, you know. So
Right.
But yeah, it was tough going. That was also, what was it? I was in 1991. I hadn't finished my studies yet when I got cancer. That was when I got the Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yes.
And which is, for those watching your show who don't know what that is, that's a cancer of the lymph glands. And it just came up as a lump in my neck. And it wasn't sore or anything. It was just like this lump. It literally seemed to come up overnight.
Yeah.
And so we had it checked out, and it ended up being cancerous. So they took it out. Long story short, 6 months chemo, radiation, etc. Came out all fine, all good. So, but it was around this. That also kind of influenced me, because after that, I thought, well, any job I was in that I didn't enjoy, I thought, well, I can't stay another day.
Right. Right.
So
yeah,
engineering was.
You've had an interesting life because you've full circled it. You know, you've gone from obviously a pretty happy childhood, from what I understand. I mean, you had loads of friends and good fun at school. You did your thing. You went to study. You came out of that. You faced a life-threatening situation, which I mean, anybody getting diagnosed with cancer will tell you that it alters a lot of your thinking. You managed to get yourself through that treatment, which again is also, I mean, amazing. It's a very taxing emotionally and also on the body. And then I would assume working 9 to 5, and at some point deciding, no, bugger this. When did you find out you were funny? I mean, you worked as a professional comedian for a very long time. Was there a moment when you were like, actually, someone laughed at my joke and I'm funny? Because a lot of people laugh at my jokes, but there's no chance I'm going to be a stand-up comedian.
Well, this is what I always used to say, is because you know, I was always the one at the braais telling jokes and things. As I said, my parents used to tell jokes, and you know, their friends would come over and be like, "Oh, it has this whole repertoire," and my parents would always tell these jokes very animated. You know, they do all the actions and everything like that. My mom, my dad, both of them the same, and they were very good with accents and things, and so when going through all this time and through my studies and partying with my mates and everybody always used to say, oh, you should be on stage, you should be on stage, you should be on stage. But
Yeah.
you just ignore it, you don't, I could never do that. But it was actually after the Hodgkins, and I just, every time somebody said that to me, it was like a little sting, and I thought,
Yes.
oh, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you really doing?
Yeah.
And so, and all that time spent in my practice where all the guys around me, my friends were Indian, my work colleagues were Indian, is like, so you pick up a lot of stuff and it's all blue collar. And that's hilarious.
Which is relatable. I mean, it's relatable. And that kind of blue collar humor is relatable to a large portion of the country because most of us, either know someone or are blue collar ourselves.
Yeah, so it kind of went from there, and then I'll sort of fast forward to I went overseas. I came back, and then when I came back from overseas, I decided I've got to get into travel. I wanted to travel.
Yeah.
So I went to Johannesburg, and so when I was living in Johannesburg, that was when I tried my first comedy gig. So a few years later, married, I already had my first son. Yeah. And that was when I went to a place in Melville, in Johannesburg, called Cool Runnings.
Oh, yes.
And they had do you remember?
I do.
John Vlismus ran it on a Sunday night. And because I couldn't get gigs at any of the other places. So, and it was, at that stage, it was like asking a chick out, that sort of nervous. God, it takes a lot to actually ask someone to go and do. So eventually I got to John Vlismus, and he was like, yeah, put in. So I went from just the first night, it worked. I prepared some 5 minutes of material and it worked, but I wasn't doing Mike Naicker yet.
How nervous were you stepping onto stage? Because they say that the art of comedy, takes a lot more, and it's a lot more nerve-wracking in a live situation than, say, drama.
Oh, dude, I was creaming my drawers, man. I was crapping myself. I was terrified. So, I mean, I drowned it in beer. I think the first night I must have had about 7 or 8 beers before I stepped on stage.
Love it.
And but I was very fortunate. I was lucky. I had a very gentle road into comedy.
Right.
Because I had a fairly decent to good responses right from the get-go.
Right.
And I always tell people that I'm not saying that to brag or anything. I'm just saying that's the way it had to happen for me. Because if I'd had a bad gig the first night, I would never have gone back.
Right.
My ego is not that strong.
So Kev, you're married, you go and give this a try. John Vlismus says pull in, which, let's face it, John Vlismus, that's the kind of guy he is. Fantastic South African comic and really been very helpful at helping others launch their careers. So you do the first gig, you get the laughs, which you must have felt fantastic. I mean, walking up that stage, you must have thought, Jesus, that was fantastic. Hey. How do you go home? I was buzzing. What did you say to your wife when you got home and you said, well, listen, it worked, I want to do it full time? Or did you wait a while?
Yeah, I said to Auntie, roll over, it worked tonight. No, it was like I said, I wasn't doing Indian accent at that stage, but I remember waking up and saying, it was brilliant, it worked. But I was buzzing, I couldn't go to sleep.
Yeah.
But I always remember when I came off stage, even on that first night, John Vlismus, he patted me on the arm and he said, oh, well done. He was smiling. And I was like, his whole face changed. And I was like, wow. And I knew at that moment there was going to be something happening because I could feel, and that energy, when you're doing something you love, that energy just flows. You don't feel like you're working hard. You're like, whew, it's just quite a rush.
And the decision to so obviously from that first gig there were numerous other gigs that you did, got similar responses. I suppose the benefit was
got paid gigs. I got paid gigs from John Vlismus, and it was like it was great. Where we would all go as a group and we'd go and do like a thing down in Durban, or we did another thing at Maritzburg, we did another thing at in Pretoria. So he was great like that. Got us all out there and onto stage. Even got me a few TV ads.
Yeah. And you were
Yeah,
still
I
you were
spent,
still Kev, sorry, you were still working sort of 9 to 5 job at the time,
yes,
or yeah. So
yeah, yeah. I had
what
to call in a
transpired?
sickie the one day to do. I had to call in a sickie the one day to do a TV ad.
I'm not feeling well.
And my boss saw me on the TV in a bathtub. He was like, what?
Oh, wait, when was this again? Hang on a second. Was this when you had COVID? No, just kidding. So
Yeah.
at what point did you decide? You know what? Hang the full time 9 to 5 nonsense. I want to do this professionally. And did you get a lot of support from people around you when you decided to step out and just do it?
No, well, it was just look. The person who supported me straight away was Pascal, my wife.
Yes.
Right from the get go, she was like, "Yeah, this is it. You do this. You know, you there's something there. You must run with it."
Yeah.
And to this day, she's my biggest supporter. She really is. She's absolutely brilliant. And it was after I won the comedy contest. Sorry, I didn't win. I came second. It was yeah, but anyway, it was amazing because the second prize was actually better than the first prize. The second prize, I got to travel to Cape Town for the International Comedy Festival.
Wow.
And perform in the Danger Zone with Russell Peters.
Oh wow.
Carl Daryn, and she's just an amazing Steve Hughes from he's Australian but he lives in the UK.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. I was like, literally, we were staying in rooms opposite the corridor from each other, and they would all go down to the theatre every night together. Absolutely fantastic experience. And then I decided to try and market myself to get a few gigs. And I used, because the comedy competition, I used that Naicker thing, that first thing that I did. I got one souped up jamming, right? Remember that?
I do.
I'm not talking 1.4, 1.6,
Right.
1.8 lux, my cousin. Right, that one.
Yeah.
So I did, and I thought, well, I need to get some gigs. And I was actually doing a marketing course at the time with my company. And they were talking, this was early days of viral marketing. So then that's when I decided to try and get it. If I could just get 1 or 2 gigs a month that would bring in like maybe 2 or 3 grand a month.
Yeah.
That would be a flip and win, So went to this one guy's place who he had some recording equipment and recorded the first Mike Naicker thing. And we were going to put it on the telephone lines because his wife worked at a place that had the telephone value added service lines. And they said to me, oh, it ended up being 3 minutes, 15 seconds, 3 minutes, 16 seconds or something. And he said, no, it's too long. No one's going to listen to it. I'll put it up there, but, don't expect anything great. So anyway, I sent it to 20 people on my phone. I only had about 22 names on that phone, and 2 of them probably wouldn't have known what it was. So I sent to like 20 people on my phone and said, phone this if you like it, blah, blah, blah. And in the morning, I remember getting a call from this value add service company. What have you done? And I was like, what do you mean? I said, this is one of the longest calls we've got, and it did 16,000 calls last night.
Whoa. That's amazing.
And I was like, you what? And of course, I made a bit of money out of that. And I was like, this is crazy. Now what do you do? Because this is now not just marketing. This is now an earner. And so it just built from there. And then I was getting gigs. Then it was, you start getting actual paid gigs. And then you realize, okay, you need to write a bit more than just, 5 minutes of comedy. Now you're writing 45 minutes of comedy.
Yes.
And that in itself becomes a challenge because, that I always tell people that first show that you do, that first sort of 90-minute show that I was eventually able to put out there, I did a show at the Barnyard, which we sold out in 24 hours, which was fantastic. Sorry, just to backtrack a bit, the first time we decided to put on a show, it was actually my wife who said, we need to put our money where our mouth is and put on a live show. You're getting all this this sort of, what do you call it? This popularity, people are this tension.
Yes.
Now we need to use this. So I said, okay. And we went to the Barnyard. Barnyard rental was 17,000 Rand for one night.
Wow.
And we basically maxed out all our credit cards to pay for it.
Right.
And we just decided, if we're going to take a risk, take a gamble, let's take it on ourselves. And they could only give us a Monday night, which is the other thing. It's like, what are you going to sell on a Monday night? This is not a popular night, but that was the story. So sent out the emails and everything. And I think by the Thursday or the Friday, we'd sold out.
Wow.
And then, as I say, the rest is history, because then we had the confidence, that and then everything starts to snowball. And it was just fun. So my wife ended up quitting her job to be
your manager. Yes.
Yeah.
I dealt with her quite a lot when you and I were working together, which we'll get into a bit.
She was
very strict, very strict at how she managed your career.
She has to be with me on there.
I absolutely love the way you just shared that story, because it literally is the way I was introduced to your work. I wasn't introduced to Kevin Perkins. I was introduced to a clip at a braai when the Oaks had a few brandies, and they were like, geez, you've got to hear this, listen to this. And it was the one about the dog who wasn't cross, he was furious. It
was the call to the rabbi.
The call to the rabbi, which was fantastic. And then we went hunting for more, because we were like, no, we need to hear more of this guy. And we literally believed you were an Indian guy from Durban, so from that process, one of the guys that were at the braai was the manager of a nightclub here in East London at the time, and he was like, no, we need to do a comedy show. Who's our first act? And we're like, no, this has got to be the guy. So we went hunting for a Michael Naicker, couldn't find you, until eventually someone said, no, man, his name's Kevin, but my name's Kevin, and that's how we found you. So the very story you've explained is the way that I became acquainted with your work. And if we can rewind to that, you were our very first big comedy show host. And we sold your show out in about 3 days, I think it was. So,
wow.
There we go.
Yeah.
That
was fantastic. I do remember that very clearly. And I just remember, because I always remember your voice. When
that's all I got.
I was like, that surreal moment when you hear a radio voice and you're standing in front of the person and you're like,
hello.
Really?
That's so funny. Yeah. So we dragged you down to East London, and you came and performed at Numbers as part of the big comedy show.
That's right, Numbers. I remember.
And about 500 people came to watch. All of which said, so when's the Indian guy coming on stage? And then you did the Michael Naicker voice, and everyone was like, oh, it's him. Oh, right. Okay. What I love, though, is you kind of split the show into two parts. When you came out, you did Kevin.
That's right.
And then Michael came through in the second half of the show, which worked pretty well, yes?
Yeah. I remember that. Gee whiz. Yeah, that takes me back a bit, because that's how I did used to do it. I used to split the show, first half me, second half Mike Naicker, and then people were saying, "Hey, we want more Mike Naicker," so Mike Naicker kind of expanded.
I think one of the wins for you, certainly having been to quite a few of your shows, I think I've been to enough shows to be able to say this is you have a very disarming personality. You're a nice person. You're a completely likable individual. But you're bloody naughty.
I like to think so.
but you're bloody naughty though, and oftentimes when you say stuff, which is really, the line is a dot to you because it's so far over the line. But people accept it because they go, but he's a nice guy. So he can say stuff like that. We like him. It's okay, right?
Yeah.
Did that work for you in your career?
It did. I was always able to sort of, as you say, ride that rough edge of, and sometimes it didn't. And I must say, sometimes it didn't work. You get people upset or whatever. And I thought, well, if you come to a comedy show and you're expecting not to be offended,
you're in the wrong place.
You're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the other thing I remembered sort of realizing is that, initially you just want to make everybody happy and everyone will laugh, everybody there, but you realize the world doesn't work like that. And there's always going to be someone who doesn't like your stuff.
Right.
and that's the reality of life. That's it teaches you. That's how you grow as a person. You realize it's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's sometimes you have to face up to the hard truths, and but fortunately for the most part, it was far more positives than negatives.
Let's focus on the positives and negatives. Best gig that you've ever done, and don't feel pressured to say the one I got you at or the couple I did with you. There's no pressure here. This is YouTube. You can be honest. Best gig you ever
did? Best gig. Okay, well, I'll say best big gig that I did was Maritzburg Golden Horse Casino. 2,000 people.
Wow.
And there was one of those real KZN lightning storms, and it it pissed down with rain right in the middle of the bloody show, and everyone was on the grandstands of the race course, and I was on a stage on the main straight of the race course.
Made of metal, right?
But it was, and the power cable that was on the stage shorted out at one point, and it was just this bang. And of course, there was sparks, right? And I got the fright of my life, and I jumped, and everybody thought it was part of the act. They were like, "Hey!" I thought it was absolutely brilliant. We took a little recess. The guys fixed it all up, and it's still raining. And I finished the gig, and then it stopped raining. And then by the time I did the last sort of 30 minutes, it was dry and balmy and warm.
Yeah.
And real KZN weather. But it was, but I mean, I've never had, because I've always felt that the sort of sweet spot is your sort of 450 people size in an intimate venue. That's nice, you get that real pumping. With the bigger venues, and I've done ICC with like 3,000 people, and it's like lawn tennis. You play a shot and you wait for the response to come back, and you play a shot. But that one at Maritzburg was big, and it was good. It was vibey as hell, and it was just really amazing.
I love that it was Maritzburg that you referred to as your biggest highlight, because you do have that joke that you talk about flying the bog roll to the and boarding the planes through the garden gates, which I believe references Maritzburg in that joke. So, with your permission, I'll throw in a couple of these clips, if you don't mind, onto the YouTube channel. But
no problem.
If they're copyrighted, they are copyrighted, written by you. So I figure if we get your permission, that's okay. Okay. Worst gig.
You got my permission.
Oh, thank you, sir. Very kind of you. Worst gig, and don't feel pressured to say my gig in East London. Just saying,
No. Worst corporate gig was for they were a finance house, but it was a religious sect, and I won't go into details of what they were, but so it was men only, and no alcohol, and silence for 45 minutes.
Did they know who they were hiring, though? I mean, did they not have you confused with someone else?
But here's the thing. So it was awful for me. I hated every second. And I thought, well, I was just checking my watch, and I had a little buzzer in my pocket that went at 45 minutes, because I thought, if I give these guys anything less than 45 minutes, they're going to complain. So I did 45 minutes on the nail. Thank you, good night, and I ducked. And I was staying at the Hilton that night, which is just around the corner. I phoned Pascal, and I said, listen, this was an absolute disaster. Just expect calls in the morning. There's going to be complaints, whatever.
Right.
And I remember I flew out, first flight back to Joburg, and I walked in the office door at home, and the phone was ringing. She said, it's these guys from Durban. And I was like, here we go.
Oh, dear.
And the guy tells me, hey, about last night. I was like, oh, here we go. He wants a refund, or he says, hey, we loved it.
Oh, my word.
I was like, what? And then he started to laugh, because obviously he realized. But apparently, and I've never heard of anything since. I don't know how to verify this, but he said they weren't allowed to show their teeth.
Oh, wow.
excessive mirth was frowned upon.
Wow.
So, which makes me wonder why you would have a comedy show.
Well, that I must be honest, that's the burning question in my mind as well. Rough night for you, but obviously it was still a win.
Yeah, so that was my worst corporate. My worst public show was the 3,000 people I did at ICC, which was sold out. And of course, my ego was this big, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. And on the night, the sound and lighting didn't work.
Oh dear.
We ended up having to refund people, and
oh wow.
Or what we did is, instead of refunding them, we ended up sending them to another show I did at the Playhouse, which was a couple of months later, and that was also full house, and it was nice. And so those people were actually quite grateful for that. But it was a terrible thing, terrible. I mean, you go out there, and the people just can't hear you.
Yeah.
So they're like, "What?" And they start shouting, "We can't hear you. We can't hear."
Right.
And it's already nerve-wracking. You've got a crowd of 3,000 in front of you, and now there's this, the peasants were getting angry, man.
I can only imagine, and we're going to wrap up segment 1 of this chat in a second. I can only imagine there must be nothing worse than being a comedian, walking on stage and getting nothing from the audience. We'll take a break on that note, reset the Zoom link, because it's about to tell me I'm over my time because I'm a cheapskate and I haven't upgraded. I'm using the free one. And we'll be right back.